right, welcome back. In this session for early adopters, we're going to talk about my first pattern. So patterns are very important in saving time, productivity, and money. So think of things that you repeatedly do in your project modeling and so on, right? And make it reusable so that you can repeat what you do each time when you're setting up. So let's get started. There are so many use cases I could bring up, and I want to keep this as simple as possible. For example, this is a building block diagram that's commonly used in this company, and they are constantly bringing it in. And I've shown you in other videos that you could certainly import this as an XML file, XML using XML metadata interchange. You could certainly do it that way, and that's how I normally would do something in this case. However, you could make this a pattern, but let's keep this simple. Now, I have already loaded my patterns. They're over in the resource tab in the browser, and these patterns are the ones that are already loaded. So I have model patterns, and we're going to talk more about this, creating category names and being consistent on those names. I'm able to get to various reusable patterns. In this particular case, I have cover page, which I use quite a bit, but we also have something called discussion points. So if I want to discuss this model, I can certainly look at this pattern. I go, is this the pattern I want? I can preview it just like this. Yeah, I want to bring in these discussion points, and then I can add it. There's a couple of ways to add it. Number one is I could drag and drop it in like this. And yes, this is the one I want. Hit OK. And there it goes. And it's bringing this pattern into this model so that I could reuse these discussion points. I could say, hey, I want to talk about the front end. I want to talk about the cloud. Next, I want to talk about the external connections, whether it's agents through CRM or chat and so on. I can do that. I have other patterns that are available that I could use. Shown this in previous videos. I want to bring in a use case pattern for this discussion. And I want this one. Let's go ahead and hit yes. And it drags in the instructions for the modeler, which tells them what to do. In this particular case, their instructions that walk them through how to do a use case. And then a use case example itself, necessary things that they need to populate. Let's go to properties like this. These are the things in this template that they need to populate. And this is coming in as a pattern, a reusable pattern that could be repeated each time the way the company or you want this element to be used. So I've created a blank project. I'm in the default Sparx layout for early adopters, and we're going to talk about the browser first, which is over on the left. So I have the typical project browser. I'm on the project tab. If we go to resources, we can see that patterns are here. It is completely blank. There's nothing in there. There's also no other data or any reference data in this project. So we're just going to act like this is your first project and your first pattern. So let's go ahead and create a package in here. We're going to select new package, and we're going to call this package simply discussion points. All right. You can come back and rename this anytime you want. We're going to create a diagram in here. That's going to be a class diagram. And we're going to change this diagram type in just a moment. All right. So we have a class diagram in here with a class toolbox. Let's go ahead and bring toolbox up. So we go to properties, design. Let's bring in toolbox. All right. So now we have a toolbox. I like to have it on the left of the browser in this case. So we'll do this. All right. So we're in a class diagram. We can see this by the toolbox. So our use case here is to build discussion points. We want to bring in a pattern that's reusable for bringing in discussion points. So we could bring in a class element like this, and then right click on here, go to appearance, go to enable custom draw, then we get this little paintbrush here. We're going to select it, and then we're going to make the element shape an ellipse, right? And then we're going to size this the best we can right now, and you'll see more in just a moment. All right. So this is using a class diagram. But what if I want to use a round shape that already exists? All right. So I can come in here to design. I can go to diagram, options, change type. And I want to use something different. I want to use data model. Let's see what this has on it, right? No, it doesn't have a round shape that I could use. Let's do it again. Change type. And I'm going to look for data flow. So data flow, if I remember correctly, had a round shape. So data flow diagrams, I'm going to hit OK. There we go. We have something called process, and it comes in already round, and then we can size this, all right? Now, when I double click and open this up, I get the typical Sparx dialog box. This is what I want. Let's just put the number 1 in here, right? And there we go. We can size this now a little bit better. Let's make it as small as we can. No, can't do it. I really don't want it that shape or size. And so when I look at properties, yeah, the properties are pretty much the same. Let's look at class properties. You can see they're pretty much the same. However, in this one, let's double click it. Let's put a 1 in here, right? And let's size this one, right? I'm going to try to go as small as I can. I get a lot more manageability of the shape using custom draw than I can using data process. I went ahead and reset this back to the class diagram type for the class toolbox here. And I have this element here. If you look at the stereotype, which I also don't like, that's the reason why not to use this particular diagram type or change. So I'm going to hit Alt-G, find it over here, right click and delete it. All right. There we go. I'm going to change this size a little bit more to get it where I want, just in case I've got double digit numbering for my discussion points. Let's see what a 10 looks like in there. Yeah, that's fine. I can certainly zoom in and look at it just to make sure, yeah, this is fine. This works for me. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take this back to a 1 like that. And then what I'm going to do, save, Control C, Control Shift and V, and I'm going to repeat this. All right. So I could come in here and go each time, go 2 like that. Go ahead and paste. There we go. Now I got a 2 and so on. Or I can Control Shift and V and copy this multiple times. So that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, that's 7, that's 8, that's 9, and that's 10, I think. All right. So now what I can do is grab all of these, come up to layout, left justify, space them down equally. All right. Then I can zoom out a little bit here and hopefully I have all 10. And then in properties, you can either just select this, hit function key 2, there's 3, let's do the next one, 4, or if you have properties up, you can bring the properties window over. Let's just slide this over like this. So as I select this one, I can change the number here, 5, 6, this is faster, right? So this is all taking time. Imagine doing this each time in every project when you want to do discussion points, right? So we can add shapes, any shape we want. We can copy and paste them to maintain the shape and significance, and so much more. We could put names in here, all right? And I did add a separate one in here, right? So I don't need this one. Alt-G, find it in the browser, right click, delete this number 2, right? And there we go. Now notice that these are not in order over here in the browser. I could sit here and just move this one down like that. So now I have them in the order that I want in a diagram called discussion points. All right, we're now ready to save this as a pattern. But first, let's get our naming conventions correct, right? So typically what I like to do is have a naming convention that signifies, well, what kind of pattern is this? It's a model pattern. So I'll use an abbreviation MP, and then I will say, hey, this is for discussion points. I'm not going to have a space in there like that. Then I go an underscore and I put in the date the pattern was created. Today's date is the 29th and the year is 25. So this is the convention that I like to use to name the patterns. Let's hit function key 2, select everything, copy, hit function key 2 on the diagram name, paste that, and now we have the diagram with the same name as the package, right? So just like this. The next thing we're going to do is want to give some sort of notes when you or other modelers are bringing this pattern up. So what we're going to do is type some simple notes in here. This pattern is used to apply discussion points to a diagram for review and or presentations. And you'll see that makes sense in just a moment, right? There we go. The next thing that I want to do, I want to make sure I do this, is baseline this. And you've learned how to do this in the channel. We're selecting the package, Control, Alt, and B. We have no baseline yet. We're going to create a new one. 0, 1 is where I like to start. And there we go. Now we have this baseline. Now we could certainly do a lot more, but this is version 0.1. So we can always come back. You can add instructions here or starting content for each one of them. You can do all sorts of things, right? But we're just going to keep it simple and leave it right here. So now we want to save this pattern. And this is the important part, all right? So we're going to go to the Specialize tab. In the Specialize tab, we have under the Technologies panel, Publish Technology. We want to publish diagram as pattern. We're going to hit OK. We get this dialog box. And it's pre-populated the diagram name and the content that we put in the notes. It brought these notes over. However, we need to set the category for the pattern so that when it's imported, it shows up in resources, and this will make more sense in just a moment, under that category. And you can't fat finger this. Unfortunately, there's not a drop-down box or anything repeatable there. This is a model patterns, falls under the model patterns category. And we want to start this at 0.01, right? Now we need to browse and we need to go where we keep our patterns. And this is the next most important thing. Do not put patterns in your XMI folder or your reference data folder. Create a package, a folder, a namespace. And I talk about RAS, reusable asset repository, in another session. Put it in patterns. So in patterns, it is blank. And we're going to give it the same name as the pattern. That's going to be for the file. So the name of this file is going to be the same name as the pattern. Make sure you keep it that way, because in your naming convention, you want to understand, well, what's the category of the pattern? Where does it fall? Also, what is it about? Very clear discussion points. However, I didn't spell discussion points, and this is repeatable, and I'm going to repeat that across. So let me fix that by simply going here, hitting function key 2, or over here, I can come over and type in and clean this up. All right, that's fixed. I certainly don't want to repeat my mistakes, have them ripple across projects. Let's do this again. We're on the Specialize tab, Technologies, Publish as Pattern, and this is a model pattern. Make sure it is in the right category. Don't fat finger it, otherwise you're going to create a different category. We're starting at 0, 1. We're going out. We're going to take the same name as the pattern, as the file name in our patterns repository. We're going to hit save, and then we're going to hit OK. All right, there you go. You just created your first pattern, but you're not done yet. You want to make sure you test your patterns. So we're in the browser. We're going to go to resources. We don't have any patterns in here. We're going to right click, import pattern, right? Then we're going to go out to our pattern repository. We're going to grab the pattern that we just created. We're going to hit open, and it brings in the pattern under the right category name that you want to use. Let's just double click and look at it. Let's preview it, check everything out before we publish this to the team, right? So just like coding, right? Dev, stage, and production, right? So what I would do is then send this pattern to my model admin and say, hey, I want this deployed within our reference data to be brought in and reused in other projects. So let's go ahead, and there it is. Let's go back to browser. Let's create a test diagram package with just the name test in it. It's fine enough, right? So we're going to use any diagram type. Doesn't matter in this particular case, right? So we have a blank diagram. Then what we're going to do is just something like that. We're going to go to patterns. We can right click on this. And this time we're not going to drag and drop. We're going to add pattern as diagram, and it's always going to put it in the upper left, right? I usually preview, take a look at it. You'll notice that, let me close this. You'll notice that it has the version number up here, 0, 1, the name, and then what the pattern's about. And we're going to hit OK, right? Add pattern to current diagram. Yes. And here comes that pattern that I can reuse in other models as we're progressing in our project or any delivery. All right, we're going to wrap up here. I just wanted to close by stating that I maintain my patterns in a separate Sparx project. All right, don't do it within your projects. You're going to get a lot of patterns and then they're going to be spread all over the place. Have a specific project for your model admin and your modeling team to create patterns and manage them there. So this is going to be our model repository. We put in a hyperlink simply by going to space, hit the space bar, go to common elements, choose hyperlink in here, right here, and creating this hyperlink, and then have that hyperlink go to your pattern repository, all right? And even your pattern repository is going to have a folder structure by model pattern category, all right? And in this case, this is model pattern. You might have one that is storyboard. You might have one that is architecture and so on, right? Different categories. Then in this cover page, you're going to bring in links to very quickly get to the patterns that are in the repository. Now you could use a navigation cell, but when you start getting a lot of patterns, this can get very busy. Instead, what I would do is I would just drag and drop this in as a hyperlink, right? And then from there, you're free to label and name this anything you want. You see over here in notes, you could put a lot of content in here that is more meaningful to what the pattern is, size your fonts, and do all of that. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions or concerns, please comment down below. Leave a like if this content's working for you. And I most particularly want to know, are you using patterns? Do you have a need for patterns? And how are you doing patterns that's differently than what was presented today? All right. So until that next episode, thanks again and happy modeling.